I've told you a lot about being a new mother and being a mom and how that changed me. I lost my mom in October, and that has changed me. It has nothing to do with my professional life, but it's another seismic shift in who I am. And the reason I want to say it here, because other people that might listen to this also lose people important to them, and we don't give each other space or time, and we should.
You've just heard Bethany Fleck Dillen from Metropolitan State University-Denver. Eric had the opportunity to interview Bethany at RMPA's annual meeting in spring of 2023. We would like to thank the Rocky Mountain Psychological Association Executive Committee for their support of psych sessions and for offering the space for us to conduct this and other interviews. We're grateful. And now, here is Eric with Bethany Fleck Dillen. We know you want to reach every student in your course, to help every student individually succeed. But how do you find out what each student wants and needs? Macmillan Learning's Achieve for Psychology offers a solution. Ask them. Achieve puts goal setting and reflection surveys in each course, where students share their aspirations, thoughts, and concerns about what they are trying to learn. Their responses help you tailor lessons and assignments and addresses both individual and class-wide needs. See for yourself. Go to macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions for an introductory tour today. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by STP. That is the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2. You can find them at teachpsych.org. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP. Psych Sessions is so grateful to have STP as a long-term supporter.
Welcome back to another episode of Psych Sessions. We're here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I want to thank the Rocky Mountain Psychological Association for providing space. They're very generous to us, and we are very appreciative. I'm here for a part 2 conversation with, I'm going to just say it out loud, one of my dear friends, Bethany Fleck Dillen from Metro State University in Denver. Hi, Bethany.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really good. We're wrapping up this conference, and I always leave energized.
You serve as secretary, is that correct?
Yep,
is that your official title?
It is. Well, it has been for 6 years, but I'm rotating off.
I'm sorry. Did I hear that correctly? So does that mean you have about 6 more? Will you end at the end of the business meeting or tomorrow after the executive committee meeting?
Well, I will end secretary at the end of the business meeting today. However, then I will be the teaching conference coordinator for next year.
Is that a congratulations or condolences?
It is. That's amazing. Like, that's the stuff I should be doing if I'm going to participate in the organization, because I'm very passionate about helping teachers be better teachers. And
excellent. So 6 years as secretary. Any epiphanies or insights from that experience? So that, and by the way, for listeners, I had the honor of serving as president of RMPA in the olden days, but they must not be so old because we overlapped on the EC.
We did. Yeah.
Any epiphanies from serving as secretary?
Not specific to the role of secretary, but the immense benefit I've gotten from participating in RMPA on the EC is, for my career and for my friendships like you and, networking and seeing amazing talks, like all of that has been awesome.
I can't remember. Has there been an election? And do we know who the next RMPA secretary is?
We do. It's Nahani Freeman.
Okay. And what university are they from?
Colorado Christian.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Very good. That'll be kind of cool to have a little, I don't want to say new blood, but a little bit more diversity of school.
It will.
Trust me, Metro State has, I've said it publicly, I'll say it privately, I'll say it publicly again. Metro State has some amazing faculty members, and I hope Metro State people will continue to be involved at RMPA, but to have more schools represented on the executive committee will be good as well.
Yeah, and just new faces and ideas and perspectives. It's really important to the organization.
Yeah. And then you'll be a teaching conference coordinator. Is that a 1-year gig?
It's a 1 year. Yep.
Well, how come it can't be more than 1 year?
Clayton Stevenson's, that's his role right now.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be president next year. And so I'm stepping in to cover while he is in his presidency.
Okay.
And then he will step back into it. If at any point it became available again, I likely would volunteer. It is something that I think would match my skill set. So
why does he get it back? I would say no give backs.
Yeah. I don't want to steal it from him. That's all. I just want to help out where I can. And
okay, I don't want to cause a kerfuffle, especially as here I am as a guest of RMPA. But I think in other organizations, to become one position, one resigns. Like I think in STP, Society for Teaching of Psychology, if you're a vice president of resources, let's say, and you become elected president, you resign from your VP,
Yeah.
You become president, and then you don't complete your vice presidential term once you're presidential 3, and usually you think of president as 3 year, president-elect, president, past president, but
right.
RMPA can do things the way they want to.
Huh.
All right. Very, very good. I didn't mean to put you on the spot in the first 40 seconds. I apologize.
Yes, you did.
I didn't mean. Okay, I didn't mean to. For our listeners, Bethany and I know each other fairly well. I don't know what would you say? Not at all well, slightly well, moderately well, fairly well, extremely well.
Fairly well. To extremely.
Somewhere on that 5-point scale. You get.
I think so, unless you want to say it's not that, but that's what I think.
No, it's the kind of thing where I think it's a little bit like family in that you don't see each other very often, but when you do, you really enjoy one another.
And click and jive and have great conversations and laugh.
You kind of click right back in.
Totally.
And it's the kind of thing where one of the things I appreciate about you, and this is very self-centered on my part, I'm giving, it's not a backhanded compliment, it's a self-handed compliment. That doesn't make any sense.
I don't, trademark?
Service mark. You get my sense of humor so that when I see you, I can pretty much be myself. And so that makes me happy that I can be myself around you.
Thank you. I can give that right back to you because I like to joke around and I like to have fun. And sometimes in conventions and things, though we take ourselves so seriously, things starts and that's not me. And so if I'm sitting next to you at a dinner, I see you down the hall and we could have a laugh, my whole demeanor in the convention is different then because I feel more authentic to myself.
The way I've tried to depict it, it's not perfect, but when I'm at home at Boise State or here, is that I take my work very seriously. I don't take me seriously. Mm-hmm. And so you want to make fun of me, come at me. You want to make fun of a publication or a book, I might be more sensitive to that. I'm happy to have a talk about the science and talk about ideas and how ideas can be improved. That's fine. But you want to poke at my baldness? Get in line. I mean, come on. I mean, if I could have hair, I'd have hair. Trust me, I would,
Yeah, I try to do that myself. I try to remind myself that, I take myself very seriously as an academic and as a professional woman. It's also... this is life and it's fun and it's messy and it's, all those things.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I think it's more difficult for women. I mean, I see my female colleagues at Boise State. I don't want to say struggle with this because it's not their fault, but I see them insulted more by students and sometimes by campus climate. and it's still happening in 2023. I thought we'd have gotten better with it. I tell this story all the time back home. You've gotten to know Mary Pritchard on the EC. She's rotating off. She is indeed, absolutely. And she's rotating off as past president.
Too, so.
And I tell this story all the time. This is probably 7 or 8 years ago. A former student who was taking a graduate program happened to be up on the 6th floor of our building. And she's rounding the corner. The student sees me first and says, "Hi, Dr. Landrum." And I say hi to the student. And she rounds the corner and she sees Mary and she says, "Hi, Mrs. Pritchard." Ugh. And so I actually was thinking enough to stop the student and say, "I need you to stop you right there." Okay, so I'm Dr. Landrum. That's Dr. Pritchard.
Yeah.
And apparently what Mary tells me is that the next time she saw the student was pissed off at Mary.
Oh, no, you're kidding.
Because I had not insulted but embarrassed the student.
Right. But then it was misplaced onto...
Absolutely. Or misunderstood, or maybe I hadn't taken the time to explain, here's why that inequity can't be left to stand. So I think it's still, there's this massive inequity. And, I think faculty members sometimes compound this. I have faculty members, or I've known faculty members who walk into the classroom and say, "Call me by my first name." And faculty members have every right to do that. I don't do it, but if I walk into my classroom and say, "Call me Eric," it's really hard for you to walk in and say "Call me Dr. Fleck," or "Call me Dr. Fleck Dillen."
Right. That's the culture of your department and your school, and you're helping build a safer place for your colleagues.
Yeah. So, but on the other hand, if I always say, "Call me Dr. Landrum," and if we all agree to that in the Department of Psychological Science, then I think it's a little bit easier for all of my female colleagues to say, "Call me Dr. Pritchard, call me Dr. Babick, call me Dr. Masaryk."
I agree.
Yeah. Do you all struggle with that?
I go by Dr. Fleck.
Okay.
But sometimes I get Miss or Ma'am.
Miss or Ma'am. Yeah. Do you get called by your first name very often?
No, actually I don't. Not really ever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
But Miss or Ma'am, a lot.
Do you answer to it?
Yeah, I guess I do. Yeah, I do. And I don't correct them. It doesn't happen
It's awkward
often,
to correct. Yeah, it is awkward.
But it's typically the only time it does happen, if I'm thinking hard about it, it's not in a class discussion or something. It's a student coming to my office and they're nervous and I can see it.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Excuse me, miss," or,
Yeah.
And so I don't want to start that conversation where this nervous student is coming to approach me about something with "Hey, that's not my name," or some kind of rebuttal. I'd rather them come in and talk to me about what they need to talk to me about.
Right. Miss Bethany, can I ask you a question? Anyway, do you get from the South? Miss Bethany, we actually have a couple of students, who go, "Miss Mary, can I talk to you?" And then I think Mary will gently stop them from doing that.
Yeah.
And occasionally it's the faculty member's fault because we expect students to pick up on it without telling them out loud.
To know all of this implicit knowledge about higher education that they don't know.
Exactly. Now,
especially at a school like MSU-Denver, first-gen students, cultural differences.
Yeah, it reminds me, and here's a place I can give you some kudos. You and Aaron Richmond at RMPA every year do on the Thursday afternoon. Is it the top? You don't call it the top 10. 10 tips. Thank you.
10 tips for success for students at conventions, and it is so fun.
I've actually sat in on it. It is fun. I've sat in the back of the room.
Him and I can, banter with each other, and we talk about real things and professional attire and how students should present themselves and all kinds of stuff. And I every time we do it, get 10 to 15 students throughout the convention that come up and say, "That was helpful for this reason," or "I learned this." And
isn't that great?
That doesn't really happen with the research talks I give. Sometimes I get a few people who are interested in the work, but I think it's impactful, and that's why we keep doing it and we keep making it better. We got to take it on the road.
Yeah, definitely. Stuff that happens at conferences can be very impactful and very lasting. This is my segue to the last time that we talked on the podcast. I happen to know because I made a slide recently that it was, you're smiling, for those that can't see this right now, which is everybody listening. Episode 28 back in 2018 was Bethany. She came on and talked to me. I think it was in Denver. I think that's where we recorded that. And we talked about your career and your civic engagement projects. But one of the things, and we were talking about work-life balance, and we had a very poignant and honest conversation about mommy guilt. And I'd heard about it before, but you really shared your story.
Yeah. I was feeling it so much at that moment in my life where I was a new mom and trying to also be an academic professional person, which is part of my identity. And I was away at a conference and I was missing my baby and, just trying to, having a child and being a new mother is a seismic shift in who I was. Like I was this person before, and then now I'm this new person. And how do I make that all work? And my emotions around that were primarily negative, which is not great. But for me, it was like, I'm not a good enough mom, or I'm not a good enough scholar anymore. Who am I? I was this person who could do all these things and juggle all these balls. And now I have my little one to attend to and be with and love. And that was fulfilling. So, all this to say, like, it changed me in such a big way, right? And I was right at that point when we talked where I was just so in it. So in it.
Not only were you so in it, but you were so generous to share that you were in it. And I think emotional is the wrong descriptor, but maybe raw,
which is a very hard thing for me to do.
I think for most people, I think the place that we see emotions publicly are from actors and actresses. They're trained to portray emotions. You weren't portraying; you were just being yourself, and we just happened to have microphones on.
Right.
Right. that could have been a conversation we could have had at a bar,
right?
But
because I'm comfortable with you and our friends, and we can be authentic. I was okay with sharing that.
Yeah, and you've heard me maybe more times than you're comfortable brag about that episode, and you were reticent today to record this part 2 because you were worried. What if it's not as special? What if it's not as and it doesn't have to be. They're not. We don't always capture the genie in the bottle.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you being here with me. So,
well, I've changed so much since that conversation.
Tell me about that. Tell us about that.
Well, now
please.
I have 2 babies. I have 2 beautiful, wonderful, amazing daughters that, but it's busy.
Right.
There's 7 and 3.
The phrase is 1 is like 1, 2 is like 10.
Yeah, that is very true.
Is that an accurate depiction?
I agree 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've changed in that way in my life. But I before I tell you more about changes professionally or personally, I want to rewind quickly to say that, well, now I lost that train of thought. Sorry.
No, that's okay. The rewind to, do you want to go towards the TED Talk?
No.
Not yet.
No, yes. So I kind of do. So we can make that work. But
don't worry.
What I want to do is rewind it to the fact that conversation that we had that night then became a line of research.
Okay.
For me. Because you were saying that conferences can be impactful. And I know we sit in sessions and we're like, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that. Or maybe this is a future study, but it's interesting, but the conversation you and I had where I had all that emotion and actually it was like me saying it out loud for one of the first times was then so important to me and real to me that then I was like, well, other moms are feeling this. I'm a psychologist. I want to start to research this. And so I did that, and that's been great.
So you hadn't researched it before?
Not at all.
Okay.
I didn't even know really. I knew I was feeling it, and I knew it had to be common, but I had never read a scholarly article about it. I had never talked to my colleagues about it. I was just kind of living it. And then I expressed it to you. We talked about it. And when the podcast came out, I had some people say to me, like, that's real. I feel that way too, or this or that. And
interesting.
So then I got a research team together and we started to look at it.
And in the literature, is it called mommy guilt, or does it have a fancier?
It's called, well, we say now like maternal guilt and shame, but there are books and papers that are called mommy guilt.
Gotcha.
So it could, be either, and maternal well-being or maternal mental health, all that kind of.
Yeah, you're right. We do think about the inspiration typically coming from you're in a session or you hear a keynote. We heard Beth Loftus yesterday, and, you sit in there and you hear her talk about her research, and we can imagine what's the new paradigm that you came up with last night?
The RMPA heist.
The RMPA heist paradigm. We'll put that in the show notes or something. You'll have to talk to Bethany.
But you could see, looking around, little light bulbs going off in people's minds in the audience while she's talking, right? Like, oh, I could do it this way. I could go there. I could do this replication. What if it was that? You can see that in those sessions.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to come from that. It could come from conversations. It clearly, we have an N of one example where it came from a podcast conversation.
And it changed like a lot of my career.
Wow.
And that's huge. Yeah, that was huge. I started doing the research, and at first it was just lit review because I wasn't familiar with the field. So I brought a couple undergrads in, and we were doing, pulling out all the journal articles and reading together and summarizing. And then everything shut down for the pandemic. So done deal. Like, you're at home now.
So does that make it easier to take a deep dive into that new literature, or harder to take a deep dive?
No, it made my mommy guilt more of like I don't know. I was probably like clinically insane. That like it took what I was feeling with you and saying was real and hard, and it made it like impossible. I was at home working full time with a then 4-year-old and 8-month-old. So now you want to talk about like, I'm not good at anything. I couldn't work and be really good. And I was trying so hard, online classes, really trying to engage. But I was also trying to help my daughter in preschool do remote learning.
Right.
This is like nuts.
Do I remember that at one point, I think it was on Facebook, maybe Instagram, you posted a picture. You're at a desk in your home, and you have, I think it's Hazel in
like a little bouncy seat,
at your feet,
at my feet.
And I think Cora's coming in to ask you a question, and you're online with your students on a screen. Am I remembering that correctly?
And that was months. I did that for months.
Yeah.
And so the original idea of like, I'm going to study mommy guilt and figure out, and I wanted to do it specifically for teachers and professors in that population. I'm going to do this, and this is the direction I'm going to go into what is actually happening with mothers right now. It was, the timing, it was just crazy because then moms, and there was a lot of articles and stories about moms carrying these burdens and what that looked like, and how many women left the workforce in droves because they couldn't do both things. And so there's obviously benefits to working remote for some people, but when you have all of these other childcare responsibilities and you're a mom, then it was very difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. I don't know if I can do it in the time. You've thought about it much more than I have.
I have.
I'm admitting that too. There's a lot to unpack there because in normal times you would have the option for daycare. When your older one gets older, they're going to first grade. They're going off to school from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. the younger one will eventually go to school, but not during COVID.
Right.
Schools are shut down.
And I don't want to put them in front of a screen. I'm a developmental psychologist. I know, screen time limits and best practices for X, Y, and Z, but I also have to teach a class in 10 minutes on Zoom. And what am I going to do?
So COVID in some ways gives you this amazing opportunity to collect data about mommy guilt.
Yep.
However, you're in the middle of your own life experiencing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the deepest level of mommy guilt you've ever felt in your personal life.
Correct. Yes.
That's got to be hard to be a researcher. I'm not talking about objectivity. I'm just talking about keeping your emotions in check.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard and stressful.
Yeah.
But I also felt like by doing the research, especially with my team, that I was doing something to help myself and other women. Like I felt like if I can get this story out or see if other people are feeling this way and share this, that is going to be helping.
I mean, I think, Bethany, it's a great example of someone doing research who is not going through the motions. Someone who's doing research to make a meaningful difference. You're not just trying to crank out another pub because you need 3 pubs across 5 years. And I'm just making that up. I have no idea what you need at Metro State. But this is something that is meaningful and personal to you. And you're not, anecdotal stories could be meaningful, case studies could be meaningful, but you're collecting data as a psychological scientist the way you've been trained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the like wedding of the two worlds, which we talked about last time when we had an interview. It was like, double dipping that part. Like, this is my mom world. This is my research world. Now I'm doing them together because that is meaning.
Yeah. Absolutely. So have we built up to the point where we can talk about your TED Talk?
Sure. Yeah. That was pretty much the culmination of this body of work, which was really exciting and terrifying and awesome.
So how did that happen? Did someone ask you? Did you see an ad online? How did that happen?
There were like calls for applications. And I deleted them as soon as they came in my mailbox. I was like,
why? Why?
Because it just seemed wild to me that I would have something important enough to say in a TED Talk. I know.
I want to put a pin in that.
Yeah.
I want to come back to this theme of, I don't think I have something to say, but yet, as it turns out, you do. I'll come back
and I did. And so, but it took another colleague of mine to then forward me one of the calls and say, well, this body of research you're doing right now fits this. You should do this.
Are you comfortable saying who that person is? Would you rather not?
I'd rather not.
Okay, I'll guess later.
Okay.
After we hit stop.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. All right, so on your own, you hit delete.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that. Or either I don't have time or I don't think I have a message that's important enough. I don't want to bother.
Yeah.
But somebody that you know and trust and respect says, dude, no, probably not
do this,
dude.
try this. Yeah.
You got something here.
So then I thought, okay, fine, I'll try it and we'll just see. Because you have to do these like strange 3-minute video things that you're supposed to basically tell them that quickly what your idea is worth sharing and why it's big.
And this is still during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I will tell you, as someone who applied to give a TED Talk and was rejected in Boise, Idaho. Hi, Eric Landrum here, rejected TED Talk applicant. In the before times, they weren't on video. You went to a room.
Wow.
And you gave them 3 minutes in front of a U-shaped table with about 8 people judging you before you got rejected. But
that's
you got to
very anxiety provoking.
But you were going to do it in front of a live audience in the before times anyway. So you gave yours on video for 3 minutes.
Yep. And then heard back like a week later that they wanted to talk to me more.
Over Zoom?
Over Zoom.
Okay.
And then we did that. And then they said, you can have a spot.
And so do you have any sense of like how many people now, by the time you gave it, there was a live audience, right?
Yeah. It was full.
but it was still
1,500 people or something.
Okay, all right. You're getting ahead of me.
It was. I mean,
it was. Yeah, I've never
been so scared in my life.
I've never spoken in front of 1,500.
I've never been
people.
so scared in my life.
But how many people spoke that night? Do you
I think there was maybe 9 or 10.
Okay. And do you have any idea how many people got to the semifinal 3-minute interview?
I'm not sure.
If I had to guess, if I'm trying to remember from my Boise experience, and they may not be parallel processes, probably 30.
Yeah.
They probably went, deleted. I shouldn't say delete. Disqualified 2/3 of the people.
Wow.
But still, so 9 or 10 people speak on that night in front of 1,500 people. And this is during COVID.
Yeah. Well,
all masked up.
All masked up. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
1,500 people.
Yeah.
So
it was, the pandemic was winding down. In-person events were obviously like a
and they
thing
probably
again,
spaced everybody in the auditorium,
big
auditorium on the Metro State campus.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned in your TED Talk, because I've seen it multiple times. It actually makes
all the views are
no, 2 or 3 of those are mine. I got to tell you, and I'm not talking about clicking and then exiting. I'm talking about clicking and watching all the way through. Both of your daughters were there,
mm-hmm.
probably in the front row, near the front.
No, they were actually. There was like a remote viewing room, because they had so many people that were coming that they did one of those like we're going to broadcast it in this other room also. And they were in there.
And your husband was with them, obviously.
My husband was in the main room, so they were with a couple friends of ours.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Was it a big night for them as well? It's hard to know.
It's hard to know. And Hazel was still really young. She was like probably 1.5 or 2, maybe. And, but Cora thought it was exciting, But
cool. How was it for you?
Terrifying. It was really terrifying, and really difficult to prepare for.
Tell people about the process and how you had a coach assigned.
Yeah, you have a coach, because I could get up and give a research talk. I can talk about numbers and data, and I can say like, well, this is what I found. It was statistically significant. And TED Talks are not that. They want you to come out and open up your heart in front of all of these people to make it important and impactful, but not cry, even though that's very scary. And in some of the practices, I cried.
They don't want you to cry.
No, because they want you to be able to deliver it. And I guess it's okay to show some emotion and get a little teared up, but you're still giving a talk, a speech. But that's not academia. We don't get up at these conferences and say, here is something that is so emotional and real and my heart. Mm-hmm. And that's what they wanted me to do. So the first few times that I met with my coach, I was coming in as the academic. I was going to give an academic talk, and I had to scrap the whole thing and rewrite it, and then scrap it again and then rewrite it. But I did push back to make sure that there was data in there, which they at first said that, don't. But I can't say.
How come we don't do that at conferences? How come we don't put some of our own, not have the data be about our lives, but how come we can't be more of ourselves? What would be so terrible about me getting up there, giving a talk, and if I got emotional and cried a little bit and then collected myself?
Yeah, I think it would be.
What would be? I've actually seen people I've seen Jim Korn get emotional. I've seen Bill McKeechee get emotional in a talk.
If you're an audience member in a talk like that and you feel that emotion, it's more impactful. We're humans. Yeah. That would be great if we could have a cultural shift to do that.
Yeah.
But it is maybe a gender thing, because I don't know as a woman scientist that I want to get up and be
You're right.
there,
You're
know?
Yeah, I know.
So
what was the reaction after you gave it, after it was released?
Yeah. So the thing is that mine took the longest to be released in our group because of the data. Because TED Talks are, all the people who review them from the TED organization need to and want to make sure the evidence that you're presenting is sound science and research. And mine was the only talk that had data. So it didn't get released for like 10 months. And everybody else's was out like 2 months after it happened.
Really?
And the whole time I'm thinking like, they're not good. They threw it in the garbage. It's not coming out.
Bethany.
So then it came out and, colleagues and friends and everybody, they were very celebratory towards me. But there was also a lot of messages from women that were, keep doing this work. Thank you for saying this. I can't believe that more people don't know that this is how we feel and that still kind of gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, I think you probably turned into more of an advocate than you expected to.
I never thought I would be that.
Yeah.
Just
a researcher doing
right.
your gig, right?
Because it was something that was happening to me. Like it just, and yeah, that part is really, it's really great because it's led to other opportunities. I have parenting groups that call me for interviews or other like podcast things that I've done for mother podcasts that I wouldn't have ever had that opportunity. So that's been really cool.
And I know you've appeared on local TV a bunch of times too in Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's fun. It's like that whole, we should make our science usable for the public.
Science
and
communication stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's a theme here, I think, and I think you already know it. When you put yourself out there, you succeed. But I think you don't see yourself being successful perhaps on your own or the first time. But others see you perhaps the way you don't see yourself. You think that's fair?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I do. I think that I am my own worst critic in a lot of ways, but I also don't think that that's very unhealthy. I think that it helps me push myself and try to be better.
It's not unusual.
Yeah. And yeah.
Okay.
That's all I can say about that.
Isn't there a line in Forrest Gump like that? And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
I think you're quoting Forrest Gump to me. Life is like a box of chocolates.
I would say just keep running.
Just keep running. That would be a good motto to have.
Yeah.
So you have varied interests. I know you have interest in helping students become better learners, and you have interests in helping teachers become better teachers. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I have always loved being in the classroom, and the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning Research I've done has been what was my passion before, the mom stuff kind of came in and took over, and it still is. I'm still doing that work in publishing. But I think I'm at a point in my career where my impact, instead of it being on the students in my classroom, if I could impact other faculty, then that would be a more broad change that I could potentially have. And I would like to start shifting in my role in some kind of way towards that.
How many years are you post-PhD?
2009. So
you're 14 years post-PhD, and you're full professor at Metro State.
I've been at Metro for 13 years. That's a long time.
So, and this is maybe an awkward term, you see yourself getting itchy?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to stretch your skill set. You've got the teaching thing down. Mm-hmm. You can do 4 different preps in one semester. It may be challenging, and it'll keep you busy, but you got this. You could do it with one hemisphere tied behind your back, right?
I want to be fueled like I was in that research we were just talking about by passions and by interests. And, and I am at a point in my career where I think shifting or just changing it up so that I'm doing something a little bit different with my knowledge would be really invigorating.
So assuming that no one at Metro State's going to listen to this, would that be what? Would that be like dean at a small private liberal arts college? Would that be like a CTL director? What would that look like? What would that kind of challenge
it has always been a goal to do Center for Teaching and Learning work, assistant director kind of jobs. And I look at them, but it is scary to consider like leaving tenure for a job like, another job. That's just it's a thing that a lot of people think would be crazy, and I still kind of struggle with that myself, if that's the right move.
Yeah. Earlier today, I interviewed Leslie Cramblett Alvarez for
she did that.
A part 2. She did that. And when she was considering it, she talked to one of our mutual friends, John Gray at Pacific Lutheran. And when she talked to him about the prospect of giving up tenure, we think of this tenure as this right and this privilege. And John characterized it to her. I'm not going to get the words exactly right. Tenure is the hook that keeps faculty members around.
She told me that over lunch this past summer.
Yeah.
We sat down together because I watched what she does. She's brilliant and brave and amazing, and I admire her a lot, and I trust her advice. And I sat with her at lunch, and she said that to me, and it did change my understanding and view, and
Yeah, I think it's a big deal for people who have earned tenure to think about, giving that up. I think in economics, it's called sunk cost. So once you've put a bunch of money into some, if you bought a car for $20,000 and you've paid another $15,000 in repairs, it's hard to think about, I'm going to stop putting money into that car. I've put so much into it and go some other route, or a house. I think it's the same thing about tenure. I put so much into getting that tenure. I went to grad school. I earned my doctorate. I've been at that school. I jumped through all their
and everybody
damn hoops.
Wants to get that. Like, it's fortunate to be the person who's selected. And
absolutely, yeah. And now all of a sudden, I'm thinking about, or maybe I don't know if you're thinking about it or not, but other people might be thinking about, do I want a new challenge? And might that be a professional staff position where I could really stretch my skill set, and like Lasse has. And by the way, I think COVID has hastened this for a lot of people. What is it? The Great Escape, or the Great Retirement,
resignation,
the Great the Great Resignation,
or quiet quitting. Even like just the way the work life balance,
absolutely.
Everything has shifted.
It's all it's all about work life balance in some way. And I think I admire people who at least consider it, or are willing to think about, what could my professional life look like non-tenure?
Yeah.
I think tenure's like handcuffs, and they're not always golden handcuffs. Mm-hmm. I said this to Leslie. They could be rusty handcuffs.
Could not be comfortable.
Yeah. They might be cheap, not well-paying handcuffs that keep you
But it's really scary. Grass is always greener on the other side. What if I do this? And it's, I lose the flexibility that I needed in my life as a mother, or whatever it is. I don't have those answers. I'm not over there. And that's a scary thing.
Right. I think the thing that you lose is what we perceive as a safety net of tenure.
Yeah.
But I think for everyone that I'm blessed to know that takes that leap, their real safety net that they have is their talent.
Themselves. That's like
exactly
Leslie.
right.
If that job didn't work out, she's brilliant, and she could go anywhere and
Absolutely.
do an amazing job and be fulfilled.
And anywhere includes leaving higher ed.
Yeah.
And I know her family is now centered in Denver, moving from Alamosa, and she could find 50 jobs in Denver. Now, maybe she's not as confident about it, but you and I are just as or have the confidence for her on her behalf.
I don't have it, though, if you were going to say we can't make that jump, because I don't have it. So how
you don't have it for yourself.
Right. Yeah.
See, but
if I did, then maybe I would make that leap. But I'm trepidatious. It's scary.
But Dr. Trepidatious, it's destiny calling, right?
Yeah.
But I have it for you as much as I would have it for Leslie. And this is the thing, I am a broken record. I'm the old man that says things over and over and doesn't remember if he said them or not. If only people could see themselves the way the world sees them, right? And I don't want to dismiss the imposter phenomenon or struggles that people have had. I don't want to be dismissive of that at all. I don't know if the analogy is appropriate. It's not the cat with 9 lives, but the cat that no matter how they fall, they always land on their feet. They never land any other way. I think you would too, if it came to the spot that you would consider that for yourself.
Thank you. It's in my realm of what I'm thinking about and wanting and contemplating. It's a big scary jump. So.
Yeah. And, and sometimes, people look at things in their own institution. I mean, it could be a leap within Metro State.
Where you have a fallback line.
Yeah. It could be something where it's a cross appointment or a half cross appointment, or it could be something where it's just so enticing that the family decides we're going to up and move across the country.
Yeah.
And, we're going to go somewhere and have a real adventure.
Yeah. That does sound exciting, like that idea of big change is exciting.
Yeah. So Bethany, what else is going on in your life? What is there anything else? I've kept you. Oh my gosh, look at you! You're very generous with your time. I had no idea that much time had gone by. I do have
one other thing that
you want to mention. Please do.
And it's I don't even know how to say it, but I've told you a lot about being a new mother and being a mom, and how that changed me. I lost my mom in October, and that has changed me.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with my professional life, but it's another seismic shift in who I am. And the reason I want to say it here and on the podcast, and I debated it, and I didn't know how to even bring it up, but because other people that might listen to this also lose people important to them, and we don't give each other space or time.
Yeah.
And we should.
Yeah, I mean, you say it's not related to your professional life, but it is.
Well, it is, because I got the worst evals I've ever gotten last semester. That was terrible because I didn't reply to emails. I'm at RMPA and I don't have a single research presentation. So it is related to my professional life, but I wanted to say that because I'm a researcher not doing research.
You're a researcher that just isn't doing research at the moment. And again, everybody who knows you, everybody who really knows you, knows what happened. And, I suspect that you chose not to share with your students what happened.
I did last semester. I had to when I was gone for a week and then came back.
Yeah.
And that's something that wowed me because they still said things in student evals that I thought they would understand, but they don't. I don't even know why I care about the evals that much. It just really, but I haven't told my students this semester.
Well, you're far enough along in your career that you should be insulated from the impact of the evals. You care about I can give you a hypothesis. It's only for you to decide why. You care about your evals because you care about your students.
Yes.
It's a little bit surprising that they're not more compassionate. If it were reversed, they would want compassion from you about late assignments or not replying to emails. So it's a little bit disheartening when we know they would want empathy, but yet they're not giving empathy.
We don't do grief and academia the right way. And I didn't know that before. Now I don't think that I got a week to go home, and bury my mother. I had a week, and then I had to go teach. Like that's
yeah. And we can edit this out if you want to. For the record, this isn't the first time Bethany made me cry.
I'm good at that, I guess.
It really ruins the microphones. I have to step back. The electrocution.
And I didn't want to make the end of this sad or anything, but you asked me what is one thing that we haven't talked about, and I did want to say it because we talk about my identity as a mom, we talk about my identity as a researcher, or maybe not being a tenured track faculty member, but my identity as a daughter, and
absolutely
this seismic shift of who I am has just happened. And to not have research presentations or bring students here. I've been walking around this conference feeling like a zombie because I don't even know what my place is. Like, what am I doing then if I'm not doing my work?
But yet, you have been doing your work as RMPA secretary, as a role model for people who are here. My opinion, which may not matter, is that you don't have to be presenting posters and giving talks to be who you are. You especially don't have to do it every year.
Yeah.
If you remember someone's photography, there wasn't a presentation every year.
There was like 18.
But there wasn't presentations every year.
Yeah.
And maybe we don't want to talk about this. Didn't people come to you at Metro and say, I'll cover your classes next week?
Yes. My colleagues taught for me while I was gone. And
the 1 week. But what about the following
They had
week?
offered to do more. But I knew that I had the 1 week. They had offered to do more, but I couldn't, and I still always do have trouble accepting like the help of my colleagues in those ways. Like and the message of our culture and our work is, pull up your pants and keep going.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, rub some dirt on it, go back to the classroom, go back to work.
I hold myself to high standards, and I just didn't. Maybe I should have said yes. I need an extra week or something like that.
Yeah. I don't know enough about Family Leave Medical Act. Would bereavement qualify under? Could you have taken 4 weeks under FMLA?
Potentially, maybe I could have.
But knowing you would have felt guilty about that.
Yeah, and with grief,
there's no timeline.
And your busyness helps and doesn't help. Like you don't.
Busyness is a helpful mask.
Yeah,
it's a helpful. It's the ostrich with the head in the sand. Which is not bad sometimes because it helps you make it through the day and not cry all day. I mean, when my mom died, I was a mess. I was an absolute
How old
mess.
were you when your mom died?
She died in 2017, so I was 55.
Sorry.
But I was traveling to a psychi meeting. I don't mean to make this about me.
I want to know. No. This is what we don't talk about.
I'm happy to share. I just don't want to take. I don't want to be the mansplaining. I'm gonna.
No, we don't.
Yeah, no. I was traveling to a psychi meeting in. Charlotte, North Carolina, and. I was traveling to a meeting, Charlotte, North Carolina. For psychi.
Oh, I really did it this time.
Yeah, she broke me.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
It changes who you are. It changes.
And I got there Thursday night, and she was really sick. But who knows? You don't know how long they're going to last. I got a phone call from my brother Friday morning. Said she had passed, so I went all day through Friday, psych meetings. And
how did you do that?
Because I had to. I was, I think, president-elect. Plus, I didn't want to tell anybody.
You didn't tell them?
Hang on. I did tell them. Got back to my room Friday night. And I think I had like an adjoining room with John Gray. And I told him. I just cried on his shoulder. He was the best friend. And then on Saturday, I told him. And then I didn't fly home. I flew to Chicago. And then I had my family fly out. And then took care of funeral stuff. Buried my mom a couple days later. You know? Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm glad that you're telling me this. I didn't.
Happy to tell you, of course.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think if we tried to top the last one, I think we just did.
Well, you know, the only person at work that, not the only, but somebody at work at Metro State that has been incredibly kind and gracious to me is Anna Robb, because she's had losses in her life, and sometimes, you know, I could just look at her and I know she knows that I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to, you know, how to bring it back. It's just, we're people, and we're doing this job, and we care about our job, and
You don't want to let the people around you down.
Don't represent my students. I don't want to let my students down either, you know.
And you didn't. You didn't.
I mean, I have to try to find a new way to be. I have to learn how to be without her. I have to learn how to be a mom again now without my mom. And all I do is try to study maternal health and well-being. Sometimes I feel like I can't do it all. I can't have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old and be a full-time professor and a wife and a good daughter to my father who's heartbroken. Then a friend. This is silly. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. I think if you allowed the world to see you, if you saw yourself the way the world sees you, they would say you're being successful at all those things. Regardless of how you feel about it. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just gently disagreeing.
You know, I don't know that I'm ever going to be able to do that.
I get that. Bethany, I think that kind of motivates you.
Yeah.
Because you're not satisfied with who you are.
Yeah.
As a woman, as a wife, as a professor, as a friend, as a mom. But I also think, as your friend, you rip yourself apart so badly. It's so undeserved.
Thank you.
There's so many other people out in this world that I'd rather rip up.
Yeah, I can think of a few too.
Yeah. After this is over, let's make a list.
I just want, like, all of us teachers of psychology and colleagues to, like, support each other in this human way. It's not about, like, your publications or your... It's fun to talk about research with you or stuff, but...
It's not what matters.
It's not what matters. And that's why. And so I do feel silly, but you said, like, what is the one thing that we haven't talked about?
It's not what
It
matters.
is so central to my being right now that I couldn't not say it.
I'm glad you did. You know what's going to matter at the end of my life? I'll tell you. Do you know what I want to be remembered by? My kids. I want people to say, he was a pretty good dad. That's what I want people to say. I don't want people to say, he had 16 books. He had 89 publications. I don't give a crap. I want my son and my daughter to think I was a pretty good father. I want my wife to think most of the time I was a pretty decent husband. I'll settle for most of the time. You should meet her sometime. Ask her yourself. We'll be coming to Denver more often.
Yeah, I look forward
That's
to
what's
that.
most important. Not 31 years at Boise State.
That's important too, though. Your contributions are important too.
It's what paid the bills. And I'm very thankful for Boise State for providing a paycheck and a place to be a professional. Did I raise decent human beings? That's what's going to be the most important thing. And I've said that for a long time. I'm not just saying that to you right here, right now.
Yeah. That is the most important thing.
It is.
Yeah. So you ask for a part 2 and you got a therapy session. I got a therapy session.
Wow, yeah. So you got any good jokes to end this on?
I know. Wow.
How many
see, how do we
psychologists does it
lighten
take?
it up?
How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
One, if the light bulb is willing
Wants
to change. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
It's kind of a dad joke. I've cried on the podcast before.
Okay, good.
This is not my first one. You should listen to the one with Loretta McGregor.
Okay.
I bawled. Oh, I bawled hard. I'm an emotional guy.
That's a good thing.
It is. It's not always well received, but oh well.
Yeah. You be your authentic self.
I got to be me. It's only me I've got. Well, Bethany, I'll ask this with trepidation. Anything else you want to talk about?
No. Nope. Thank you so much. I don't want to talk about anything else.
You going to take motorcycle lessons or learn how to ride a horse or buy a fog machine, anything like that?
Those are all awesome things that should happen for everybody.
I
fully endorse that.
I only wish that text messaging chain was actually true. It would have been better if it had been true. Yeah. Completely made up. K-cup completely made up, all completely made up. Well, thank you for coming back on the podcast.
For giving me space and time to be me and to tell you things that are
whatever
important to me.
And thank you for being such a good friend.
Thank you.